Apple has been a big part of my story and my family's story. We were Apple people all the way through the dark ages, when the clone eras and nobody liked them, and all that stuff. So I was a fan before they were popular again, before Steve came back. But I think that's a brand that's done an amazing job of balancing hardware and software and putting them together in a package that really works. And I think with the recent Apple Silicon chips, we've seen the huge improvements Apple was able to make as they switched over from Intel. My wife's, we were sitting in bed last night, and she had her MacBook Air there, and she's like, I've been using this all day, and I still have 32% battery life. And if you roll the clock back a couple years, that's not how chips work. And so for a company to be able to control their whole experience, from the hardware design to the chips that are powering it to the software that runs on it, that gives Apple some really interesting control over their ecosystem, and they have a competitive advantage that a lot of their competitors don't. With you look at Dell, or you look at some of the other, even Microsoft, as they're making their own PCs and stuff now, they're relying on parts from a lot of different suppliers or an operating system that they're not in control of, and they're unable to see some of those really massive improvements that we've seen in Apple recently. So I think that analogy, if you kind of think about that with some other companies and apply that maybe to the support experience, if you're able to tie things together and kind of put them in a way that you can control the whole story, you can control your customer's experience of the entire product or brand, I think that gives you a really interesting competitive advantage that you don't see in a lot of companies. Some other companies that I admire, like you, it was Honda, Toyota, as we were growing up. And I have a Toyota 4Runner. That's our main family car right now. For my less reliable car, I have a BMW, because I like cars that are old, and this one's an 89 E30 BMW, and it's fun to work on and fun to drive. But I don't buy that one for the cheap parts or the necessarily the reliability there. So I think another brand that I really like is a Nintendo. I think they've done an interesting job. As a kid in the 80s, I saved up money and bought my first Game Boy. I think like in probably 1991 or 92. We were on a family trip to Oregon, where there's no sales tax, and so I saved $7 in buying a $100 item because I wasn't paying the 7% sales tax California. And I love the Game Boy, the device, the games that you could play on it, the portability. We didn't have. We had one family TV, but we weren't allowed to play a whole lot of video games on it. But for some reason, my parents let us play handhelds, and so my brother and I had Game Boys, and just the joy of kind of playing the game in that experience. And then as I've grown up and interacted with the brand over the years, in the Wii era, and with the Nintendo Switch now, it's just a company that I think approaches games in a fun way. Whereas you look at some of back in the Genesis and Nintendo days, it was like Genesis is this hardcore, aggressive, edgy company, and Nintendo's like, hey, we do fun. And I think if you look at that as they've moved forward, Nintendo focusing on kind of their Labo experiment with the cardboard that you could build into controllers, and doing the stuff with the DS or the Wii, where it's different devices with older technology. I think it was always like withered technology is what they called that, and stuff that was tried and true and cost effective, but then they could create an experience around that made it enjoyable in a way that when you're just pushing pixels and trying to get the latest and greatest, it's just kind of a different approach. And I've always appreciated kind of that blue ocean strategy, so to speak, where we're going somewhere different, but we can get people excited about that and not have to fight the competitors in the same way.